Meseches Nedarim Daf Zayin contains 3 Mishnayos, begins with 1 and contains 2 more. And it begins the topic of a Shvua. Shvua, as we've seen, is different than a Neder. We'll have 2 Mishnayos about a Shvua, also mentioning a Neder along the way. And then we'll have our third Mishnah, which compares Neder and Shvua, a Mishnah which we've seen referenced already a number of times. So the first Mishnah gives us one case of Shvua and then a couple of cases of Nedarim. So Shvua, it says, if he says that I'm not going to sleep, I swear I'm not going to sleep, I'm not going to speak, I'm not going to walk, all these count. These are valid Shvuas, even though that type of phraseology would be an invalid Neder because it's not taking hold on any physical object. As far as a Shvua goes, a Shvua is on the person and therefore does not have to be with reference to any object. It could very easily be an action, and these therefore work. Now, second half of the Mishnah is, if he says, Karbin loy oichalacha, that is, he says that I'm making a neder, like a carbon, that I'm on the things that I'm not going to eat of yours. So that's not a problem, because he's only swearing, he's only making a vow that that the things that he's not going to eat are usher, so it doesn't affect the things that he are going to eat. Therefore, it's meaningless. If he says ha carbon sha'achalacha, so we interpret that to mean by the carbon I'm not going to eat of yours, which is a swear he's vowing by the carbon. That's meaningless. You can't vow by a carbon. So that's meaningless as well. And the third case is where he says, loy carbon, loy oichalacha. That is also permitted. So the Gemara is going to discuss what the pshat in that line is. So the Gemara first points out that this Mishnah has to be Rabbi Meir. It can't be Rabbi Yehuda, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's no validity to anything other than kick carbon. If he just says carbon, it's meaningless. Our Mishnah clearly implies that the fact that he says carbon and not kick carbon is not a problem. The problem is something else. The fact that he said carbon loy oichalacha instead of carbon oichalacha. So therefore, it's clearly the opinion of Rabbi Meir. And the question is, that the last line, the phrase loy carbon loy oichalacha, according to Rabbi Meir, that's interpreted as it's when he says la carbon, that's interpreted as this is a carbon, and therefore I am not going to eat it of yours, and therefore that is a valid shvua. So how come here it's not called a valid shvua? It's not called a valid neder. That is. So the Gemara explains this, and we've seen this question and answer a number of times before. Here it's loy carbon or it's la carbon, which is a language of it's not a carbon, and therefore we say that he's saying it's not a carbon, that which I will not eat of yours. That means that it is a carbon, that which I do eat of yours, but that's only according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds mechalavat shemeyahain, but according to Rabbi Meir that we don't say mechalavat shemeyahain. It's not a valid lashon, and therefore it's not a carbon at all. This Mishnah, he says loy carbon. Now, in the case where we say that you read it as it is a carbon, and therefore I'm not going to eat it, that's where he says loy carbon with a shva. That's not what he said here. Here he said la carbon or loy carbon, depending on the gerus you have, and therefore Rabbi Meir would agree that this is not a valid neder. It does not go into that category, as we had said before. We're now beginning the next Mishnah, which has another 3 examples of a shvua. Again, we're not talking about a neder, we're talking about a shvua. And the difference here is going to be that in a shvua, Rabbi Meir agrees that mechalavat shemeyahain. If somebody says no, this, you can imply yes, the opposite. So the 3 cases are as follows. If he says shvua lo ochalacha, I swear I'm not going to eat from you, so that's a valid shvua. There doesn't seem to be a chiddush from that. The Gemara doesn't explain. It's a straightforward, I'm not going to eat from you. The next case is the one the Gemara is going to spend most of its time on. That's where he says, ha shvua sha'oichalacha, where he says, it's a shvua that I'll eat from you. So the Gemara understands, and the Mishnah seems pretty clear, that it is forbidden for him to eat from him then, and therefore this counts as if he said, I'm not going to eat from him. When he says, it's a shvua, it's a swearing that I'll eat from you, he means to say that I'm swearing that I'm not going to eat from you. The Gemara will ask, why is that what it means? Then the third case is where he says shvua, he says loy shvua, loy oichalacha, I'm not swearing about the things that I'm not going to eat of yours. And that implies that he is swearing about the things that he is going to eat. So he is therefore forbidding all the things that he is going to eat. Mechalavat shemeyahain, that the is swearing about the things that he is going to eat. This could even fit with Rabbi Meir. The Mefarshim explain because Rabbi Meir agrees that in a shvua you do say mechal avat shemein. The Ran explains that Rabbi Meir holds that it's only on a something which is negea to mominus that he says is no b'chal avat shemein. It's something which is isurim. You do say mechal avat shemein, and a shvua counts as isur because it doesn't apply to an object necessarily. And now the Gemara begins. The Gemara focuses on the middle case, where he said hashvua sha'ich, and that creates a lav, that creates an isser on him to eat from this guy. So Gemara says it's clear that when he says I'm swearing that I'll eat from you, he means to say that I'm not going to eat from you. So Gemara is a contradiction. We see Gemara in Shavuos that says the opposite. The Gemara over there says that there are 4 types of shvua, 2 sets of 2. There's past and future, there's yes and there's no. So you have all 4 combinations. There's I ate, I didn't eat, or there's I will eat, I won't eat. Now, the lashon that's used when he says I won't eat, when we speak about the future, we say that he says she'ochelecha, she'lo-ochelecha. Now, she'lo-ochelecha clearly means we're saying I won't eat. Therefore, she'ochelecha clearly means I will eat, which is the opposite in our Mishnah, where it clearly means that I won't eat. So the phrase she'ochelecha, what does that mean? I will eat or I won't eat? Gemara gives 2 answers and explains why each answer doesn't want to hold of the other one's answer. Abaye's answer is that the phrase she'ochelecha can be interpreted both ways, and it depends on context. If they're saying to him, eat, 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 and he says, I ate, I swear I ate, obviously there he means to say that he did eat. If they say to him, eat, and he says, I'll eat, I swear I'll eat, same thing, obviously he's swearing that he will eat. On the other hand, if they say to him, do not eat, and he says, I won't eat, I swear I'll eat, then he's obviously saying that I'm swearing that I'm not going to eat. The phrase, I'll eat, therefore means I'm swearing that chas v'sholom, that I'll eat, is what he means to say. And therefore, it can be interpreted both ways. It depends on the context. In our Mishnah, we're talking about where it's clear from context that he said, I'll eat, he meant to say, heaven forbid that I should eat. And therefore, he's saying, I won't eat. And the Mishnah in Shavuos, he's clearly saying that he will eat based on the context there. Now, Rav Ashi gives a different teretz. Rav Ashi says you have to slightly edit our Mishnah. Instead of where he says, I will eat, he says, she'i oichel, which is another way of saying that I will not eat. So you could say shelo oichel or she'i oichel. So Gemara says if he said straight out she'i oichel, what's the chiddush? How is this different than the first case? The first case was shvua lo oichel. This case is shvua she'i oichel. It's the same. The Gemara says no. The chiddush is she'i oichel is very easy. You could very easily swallow his words. If he meant to say she'i oichel and she'i oichel sound very similar, you can almost not hear the difference. There's just a slightly longer aleph there. So you may think, since it's odd for a person to say she'i oichel, if he meant to say I won't eat, he'll usually say shelo oichel. Maybe we'll interpret it as just a slip of the tongue, as just a misspeak, and really all he meant to say was she'o oichel, not she'i oichel. The chiddush is we don't say that. We heard she'i oichel, we assume he meant to say she'i oichel. Now, why did each one not want to say that? So that pshat, Abai didn't like that pshat because it doesn't say she'i oichel. If what he really said was she'i oichel and we're sticking with that, then the Mishnah should say she'i oichel. I would see that. It shouldn't say she'o oichel. Now, Rav Ashi did not like Abaye's pshat because Rav Ashi says, hey, if you go based on context, it doesn't matter what he said. The context rides the day. If they said to him that he should eat, and he said, I'll eat, I swear I'll eat. Even if he said, I eat, I swear I won't eat, it also obviously means I'll eat. He said I won't eat. He's being sarcastic. He said I eat, I swear. You think I won't eat? That's what it means to say. So it doesn't matter if he said I swear I'll eat or I swear I won't eat. If it's clear from context that he meant to say I'll eat, then that's what he meant to say, irrelevant of what he said. And therefore our Mishnah should not be differentiating. The Mishnah Shavuos should not be differentiating between whether he said I swear I eat or I swear I won't eat. Either way, it means whatever it means. It could mean either phrase, I eat, could mean I will eat or I won't eat, and I won't eat could mean I will eat or I won't eat, depending on context, because each one could be literal or sarcastic. Therefore, if you're going to go like that, it wouldn't make sense to differentiate between the two phrases. Obviously, then, we're not going like that. We're going with everything is meant to be understood at face value, no sarcasm, no heaven forbids. If he said I'll eat, it means I eat. If he said I won't eat, it means I won't eat. And the only way to interpret our Mishnah is where he clearly said I won't eat. We now get to our next Mishnah, which contrasts a neder and a shvua. So the Mishnah says, up till now, what we've been saying, that is how a shvua is stricter than a neder, that it's chal on an action, while a neder is not chal on an action. In what way is a neder stricter than a shvua? In what way is a neder stricter than a shvua? One cannot swear to violate a mitzvah, so we can't swear I won't sit in a sukkah, or you can't swear I won't put on tefillin, or you can't swear to say I won't take a lulav on sukkahs. However, you could make a neder and say my sukkah is usher for me to sit in, my lulav is usher for me to take, and my tefillin are usher for me to put on. That he could do because one could make the object usher even if that will prevent him from doing the mitzvah. So the Gemara explains, when we said that what we've discussed up till now is the way that Shavuos is stricter than in Nedarim because it's chal on a action. So Gemara asks, that implies that there is a strictness of Nedarim, that it is chal on an action. It's just not as strict as Shavuot. The problem is that it's not chal. Our Mishnah just said that it's not chal on an action. Our Mishnah gave an example where it said that these are Nedarim that are mutter. The Gemara says when we say this is the way in which Shavuot is stricter than Nedarim, it's not referring to the most recent Mishnah, it's referring to the Mishnah before. The Mishnah before said you could say a Shavuot on an action. That's what we're referring to. We said that's the way in which Shavuos are stricter. Because Shavuos, you could say a Shavuot on an action, but a Neder you cannot. The Gemara now wants to know, what is the source? Where do we see the halacha that a Shavuot, one cannot swear to violate a mitzvah or an isser, but one is allowed to make the neder? What is the source that one is not allowed to do it for a shua, and why does it not apply to a neder as well? So the Gemara quotes Rav Kahana, the name of Rav Gidol Merav, and Rav Tavyumi said the name of Rav Gidol Mer Shmuel. The source is from the pasuk describing shua that says lo yachel devara. He's not allowed to violate his word. So it's his word he can't violate. However, if it's not his word, if it's something that is cheftzei shemayim, then he is allowed to violate it. If it's an issue, if it's not his word is up to being violated, if it's an issue of cheftzei shemayim, then he is allowed to violate his word in order to keep cheftzei shemayim. Why don't you say the same thing by a neder? It says layachal dvar by a neder as well. So there it says ish ki yido neder lahashem layachal dvar. That implies that even if it's Lashem, even if it's something which is Chavtei Shemayim, still Lo Yachal Dvari is not allowed to violate his word. Someone asks, by Shvu, you have the same Lashon. It says, Ohishav Shvu La Hashem Lo Yachal Dvari. How is it any different? So the Gemara therefore answers a Svara, and Abai and Rava say the same thing, they just have a slightly different way of phrasing it. The answer is that when he makes a neder, he's applying it to the Chefza. If he's making a neder that the sukkah is usher on me, he's not vowing not to sit in a sukkah, not to do the mitzvah of sukkah. He's vowing the sukkah is something he's not going to sit into. The way Abai phrases it is he's vowing he's not going to get hano from the sukkah. So the isser that he's making is only in the hano, has nothing to do with the mitzvah. Rava says he can't say hano because mitzvah is lav lehanis nitnu. A mitzvah is not considered to be a hano. Therefore, you can't talk about the hano. But he is only answering the sitting in the sukkah. He's answering the chafza of the sukkah. However, when he's making a shvuah, he's saying, I'm not going to do the mitzvah of sukkah. I'm not going to go sit in a sukkah. He himself is making the isser on the action of the mitzvah that he's going to do. He's not making the isser on the sukkah. He's making the isser on the mitzvah because it's on the action that he would do to get into the sukkah. And therefore, it cannot happen. It is a direct violation of the isser. And that's the difference between neder and shvuah. Now, the Gemara asks that there's a different source for the halacha that you cannot make a shvuah to violate a mitzvah. It doesn't come from here, it comes from somewhere else. And that's from a brisa, which is in Masechah Shvuos, which says, it quotes the pasuk that says, L'hara oy lehetiv. Somebody makes a shvuah. Oy nefesh kisi shava levate b'suvsayim l'hara oy lehetiv. Puts the two together, a good shua and a bad shua. That means a shua where you promise to do something good and a shua that you promise to do something bad or to not do something. Those are put together. Now, just like to do something good is optional, there's no obligation to do something good. Also, the only shua you can do for something bad is something optional. Not if it's on a mitzvah, which is not optional. If it's something that you have to do. On that, there's no concept of shua. You cannot do a shua against that. So the question is, why do we need two sources? Why do we need the one which we brought here and the one we brought in Shuas? The Gemara says you need two sources. One is to tell you that he's not chayav a carbon, and one is to tell you that there's not even a lav of violating the shua.